Hey guys, back at you here with In Light of the Gospel. I am planning on doing some more interview styles like I did with Willie Simon, so I appreciate the positive feedback I got from that. I'm looking for more people to interview. I've been trying to chat with a few guys and set things up, but there'll definitely be more of that coming. But right today, I'm just going to continue on the book of Colossians. To me, and I want to show you these verses here today. I want to try it, setting it up this way so that you can see the verses as I'm seeing them. I think it's very helpful to be able to see the passages so that you're not taking my word for anything. We ended off with this passage last time where it says, having spoiled principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. So when Jesus conquered the grave, when he defeated the devil, when he overcame, he made this big show of it. Openly, he triumphed over the devil in it. When he overcame the grave, when he finally burst forth from the earth, the first man ever to come back out of the grave victorious, he made a show of it. He really rubbed it in, so to speak. And it was a beautiful symbol of triumph over him, over the devil, not just for himself, but for us. Jesus did this so that humanity could have victory over the grave as well. And he says, if this is you, if you have participated in this truth, go back and re-listen to the rest of it perhaps. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the other passage. But here he jumps right in. He says, based on that, let no man therefore, we're looking at verse 16, if you are one with Jesus and you have been placed into his body and you are free from the power of the grave, if Jesus made a triumphant victory over the devil, he says, let no man therefore judge you. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of an holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. So earlier he had warned people not to be spoiled by principalities and powers, through walking according to the rudiments of this world. He says, now let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink. A lot of the Jewish people were coming around behind the Apostle Paul. If you read the book of Galatians, the whole book is about that. They were coming around behind the Apostle Paul and telling the people that they must be circumcised, that they must keep the holy days, that they must keep the feast days. And so the Colossians and the Galatians are being bombarded with this teaching every which way. And Paul says, I preach the gospel to you. And if anybody comes and preaches another gospel, let him be accursed. He ought not to be teaching that. Even if somebody comes from me saying, I'm coming from the Apostle Paul, I've changed my mind. You need to now keep the Sabbath days. You need to keep the feast days. He says, do not give them a moment's ear. Do not listen to them whatsoever. Jesus is the only way. You can only come to God through him, and you need nothing else. That's the only thing you need. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink. Don't let any religious hypocrites come at you and criticize you for what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're wearing, which days you're keeping, which days you're not keeping. Do you believe that? That nobody can judge you for working on a certain day or not working on a certain day? Nobody can judge you for what kind of things you drink and what kind of things you forbid to drink? Nobody can judge you based on which days you keep holy and which ones you do not? This is a glorious liberty to know that no religion has control over you. Those things were a shadow, it says. They had a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Now imagine someone worshiping a shadow rather than the body who is giving the shadow. Those things in the Old Testament, the Sabbath days, the new moons, the holy days, the feast days, they all had little tiny glimpses into who Jesus was going to be, but all they were was a shadow. And I've used this illustration, I've heard it by other preachers as well. Imagine if I had here a picture of my wife, and I walked around looking at this picture and I worshipped it, so to speak, and I was in love with this picture. I just thought it was so beautiful, but my wife is sitting right next to me. Would it be appropriate for me to be looking at the picture when my wife is right here? Now, if she's not in my presence, I can see, you gotta remember what she looked like and you want to admire her beauty, that's one thing. So if you want to read the Old Testament law, if you want to read the commands of God in the Old Testament to try to just get a better glimpse of who Jesus is, that's one thing. But if you're going to hold to these things as if they are your lifeline, if you're going to keep the Sabbath days and the holy days and the new moons and all these feast days and stay away from this drink and only drink that stuff and keep all these laws and commands, then you're focusing on an image, on a shadow, when the real thing is right here. It's Jesus himself. Can you not see that? Let no man therefore judge you. If you are exercising liberty, holding on to Jesus, loving him, and then eating pork, eating shrimp, drinking some alcohol, not keeping a Sabbath day or a Sunday holy, or not doing everything that religion wants you to do, he says, don't let anybody judge you. Don't let anybody criticize you. Don't let anybody make you feel like you're a second-class Christian or that you're somehow lesser than. You know, in the book of Galatians, when Paul and Peter were having this great feast with the Gentile people, perhaps eating pork and shrimp and who knows what all else, having a grand old time. And then somebody showed up from James, meaning a Jewish Christian. Some group of people came from James, from Jerusalem. And immediately, Peter and several others, they were drawn away. They quickly left off eating with the Gentiles and went and ate with the Jews. And then Peter rebukes them to his face. Paul rebukes Peter to his face in front of everybody. He says, how come you are compelling these Gentile Christians to be like the Jews when we could never keep the law? Those people are law keepers. The Gentiles were not. Don't let anybody judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of holy days. This is a strong warning. We ought to be free Christians, not free to live in sin. Paul is by no means trying to tell us, go ahead and do whatever you want. But those laws, those customs, those commands, those outward actions were just shadows of who Jesus was going to be. And now we have the actual body, the very image of the things. We have the real person that gave that shadow. Verse 18, let no man beguile you. That means cheat you, rob you, trick you. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility, in worshiping of angels, intruding into those things which he hath not seen, vainly puffed up by his fleshly mind. You know, it's easier to be religious. It's easier to walk by rules. I used to attend church with a guy who was part of the Church of God in Elmer, and then he left, and he went to a church where he didn't feel like there was any rules. There was nothing to keep him straight, and he said he missed it. He said, at least there I knew what I was supposed to do and what I was not supposed to do, because everybody was watching him, checking here, checking there, judging him on this, judging him on that, and making sure that everybody stays just this way and doesn't go that way. Many churches are like this. They don't allow people to walk in victory and in truth and in freedom. They are constantly judging and critiquing one another. He says, don't let anybody beguile you of reward. If you walk according to the Old Testament commands in order to gain peace and access to God, in order to give yourself confidence, he says you're going to lose rewards. I don't know what that looks like, but it says you will be giving up certain rewards in a voluntary humility. You know, it often looks more humble. You know, oh no, I don't touch that. I'm very humble. I'm very godly. I can't go there. No, I can't touch that. Oh, I can't look at that. You know, and you're giving off this impression as if you're this holier than thou type of person. This is what turns people off of Christianity. Unbelievers. Obviously, we don't live to please unbelievers either, but we do not and should not and cannot live to try to impress people around us or to try to please everybody around us. We walk with God. We don't walk so that we won't ever offend some religious person. Now, there is a place to walk carefully with the weaker brothers, to be careful to not offend weaker brothers, young Christians who are just struggling to come out of some of this stuff. He's talking about religious hypocrites walking around judging you for what you do and what you don't do. You know, let no man beguile you. You have been given Olympic gold, and false teachers want to take that prize away from you. They want to keep you from rejoicing in that truth. They don't want you to feel too confident, too close to God, too accepted, too loved. They want you to always take you down a notch. A lot of preachers do this. You come to church Sunday mornings and they just give you your weekly whipping and make you feel like, yeah, I've got to do better. I'm not good enough. I just did fail again. And that looks humble, right? I mean, it looks like, well, this guy's admitting all his faults. What about just walking in truth and saying, God, thank you that I am completely free. Thank you that I am holy and accepted and beloved, and I'm one with the Father. I'm one with Jesus Christ. He's going to say in the next chapter that our life is hid together with Christ in God. That doesn't sound very humble to some people. To religious people, that sounds proud. But here he says, let no man beguile you with a voluntary humility. Oh, woe is me. I am nothing. I can't amount to anything. I don't amount to anything. This is a very humble mouthed kind of thing to do. Oh, no, it wasn't me. It was God in me. And what is it doing? All it's doing is drawing more attention to yourself by this voluntary humility. And he says the reason why it's so dangerous is in verse 19, not holding the head. Let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility in the worshiping of angels. I won't get into that because I don't know if I fully understand it. But he says, let no man beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility. And then in contrast to that, verse 19, and not holding the head. So you're voluntarily humble, trying to keep all the feast days, the holy days, the Sabbath days, the new moons, and looking this way, looking that way, not eating this, not drinking that, and you're filling your life with all this stuff that makes you look really humble and godly and holy. And he says, and you're not holding the head. You're not holding the head, from which all the body by joints and bands, having nourishment ministered and knit together, increaseth with the increase of God. What a contrast. To know that we are simply holding to the head. How do we hold? By faith. How do we know we're accepted? Because of what he's done for us. We accept it, we rejoice in it, we hold fast to it, because that's where we get our nourishment. That's where we get our ministry from. That's where we know we're knit together. Wherefore, he says in verse 20, if ye be dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world. Look at that. If ye be dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world. That's true, right? This is hypothetical, not hypothetical. This is an actual statement. If this is the case, he's not asking if you are. He's saying, based on what I've told you, if we are dead with Christ from the rudiments of the world, from the principles of this world, the things that make everything go round, psychology. If you do this, you do this, you do this. Basic principles. If you walk this way, if you repeat these sayings, if you follow these 10 steps, if we're dead with Christ from the rudiments of this world, why, as though living in the world, are ye subject to ordinances? Why would you subject yourself to principles and rules and lists of things that you have to do in order to be godly, in order to be Christian, in order to be conservative, in order to be whatever, fill in the blanks? Why do you live as though you're in this world? What kind of ordinance is he talking about? Touch not, taste not, handle not. Do you live your Christian life? Are you following the Bible? Are you trying to read the scriptures so that you can find out what to touch, what to taste, and what to handle, what not to touch, what not to taste, what not to handle? Then you have missed the point. You don't know Jesus. We hold fast to the head. We are accepted by God because of his work for us. And we hold fast to that. We cling to that. We get our nourishment from it. We get ministered by God to our hearts through holding fast to the head, which is Jesus. Why? As though living in the world, are you subject to ordinances? Why are you living based on, step 1, step 2, step 3? Why are you living as though Christianity is just basically the abstinence of certain things or the application of certain things? You cannot live Christianity. Christianity is something that is given to you. Eternal life is a gift from God the Father to you through Jesus. And you cannot earn it. You cannot work it. You cannot live it. Yes, we should work out our salvation with fear and trembling. But we have to have salvation. You have to walk according to the truth of what God has done. You hold fast to the head. Why, as though living in this world, are you subject to ordinances? Touch not, taste not, handle not, which all are to perish with the using, after the commandments and doctrines of men. And then he says this in verse 23. Which things have indeed a show of wisdom, in will worship and humility, and neglecting of the body, not in any honor to the satisfying of the flesh. That's what religion will produce. That's what asceticism produces. That's what the monks cling to. Those people who refrain from being worldly, they try desperately to look humble, to look godly, to dress plain, to dress very simple. There's plain Christians out there that's their label. They like to be called plain Christians, because they want to look very humble, very modest, very godly. Nothing wrong with modesty. I preach it all the time. I teach about it regularly. I think we should be dressed appropriately. But this idea that we should look very humble, that we should neglect our body entirely, that we should never satisfy the flesh, it has a show of wisdom. It really does look like it's effective. This type of living has the effect that you'd hope for by impressing people. It impresses people. Then they look at someone and say, wow, that guy, he's really dedicated. He's really committed. He's really humble. He's really godly. You look wise. You look humble. It will appear as though you never give in to the lusts of your body. But it's all done for other people's eyes. A person who knows they're accepted and loved by God can also appreciate a nice color shirt. Someone who knows they're accepted and loved by God can enjoy the beautiful things of nature and creation and bring them into their home and put them on their bodies perhaps, can enjoy ice cream, can enjoy a game of tag, can play a game of baseball, can enjoy a movie perhaps, can enjoy good sounding music, and so on and so forth. We can live very free and still be godly. And yet the religious people will be looking in and saying, oh, I wouldn't do that. Oh, I used to do that kind of stuff and I felt very convicted by it. You shouldn't be doing that. And they're just bringing attention to their godliness, bringing attention to their humility and their neglect of their body and how serious of Christians they are. And yet they're ineffective. Moralistic behavior change bends a person into a different pattern through fear of consequences rather than melting a person into a new shape. But this does not work. If you try to bend a piece of metal without the softening effect of heat, it is likely to snap back into its former position. That was a quote by Timothy Keller that I once read. I thought it was very good. You're not looking to slowly bend yourself and slowly make your will to be very humble and godly so that you'll be accepted. You become accepted, and then you will know what true humility is. True humility is to know who you are, and to accept what God has done for you and to rejoice in it and not to turn from that rejoicing. It's a beautiful thing to be accepted by God, to be loved by God, to know that you're 100% righteous and godly. But here he says, be wary lest any man spoil you, lest any man beguile you of your reward. And he jumps right into the next passage. Most people will preach from Hebrews or from Colossians chapter 3 without first doing Colossians chapter 2. Because they think, and I remember the very first youth message I ever preached when I was a very new baby Christian, I turned to Colossians chapter 3 verse 1, and I read this: if ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God, set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth, for ye are dead and your life is hid with Christ in God. And then I started extrapolating, saying, what are things of this earth? Cars, trucks, planes, clothes, working out, exercise, sports. These are all things of the earth. So don't set your affection on those things. Rather, set your affections on Bible reading, self-discipline, godliness, plain clothes. I did the exact opposite of what this passage is saying. This passage here is expanding on chapter 2. Don't live according to principles. Don't set your affection on principles. That's what he's saying. Don't set your affection on touch not, taste not, handle not. Don't live your life by basic life principles. Don't live your life based on psychology of how to manipulate and control and mold your flesh. Rather, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth at the right hand of God, because you are crucified together with Christ. Your life is hid with Christ in God. Knowing that you are complete in Him, knowing that you are accepted, that you're completely new, that there's nothing left for you to do to become godly, will result in a godlier life than living constantly for touch not, taste not, handle not. So I'm going to get into Colossians chapter 3 next time more so. But just as a little forewarning, Colossians chapter 3, 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are not talking about abstaining from what Mennonites have labeled as worldly things. It's not talking about that. He says, don't let anybody beguile you of your reward in a voluntary humility. Don't live your life based on basic principles, touch not, taste not, handle not. Don't try to be voluntarily humble. Don't set your affection on those things. What should we be focused on? What should our attention be grabbed by? Christ. Where Christ sits at the right hand of God. You are seated together with Him in Christ. You're completely wrapped up in Him. You're loved by Him, and you have a message of hope for the people around you. That's where our attention and our affection and our attention ought to be. Not on principles, not on voluntary humility. I hope you can see that, and I'd love to hear some feedback. Hopefully you subscribe to the channel. That kind of helps me out to see who's watching and what's helpful to people. And maybe you can share the video with your friends, and appreciate you tuning in. God bless you.